All right, third speaker, or fourth, I guess, technically, in this stage today. Good friend of mine, I think, what did we meet, about 6 years ago or so? Kind of in the early goings of the Columbus Ruby Brigade, and there's really just 4 or 5 people getting together, talking about Ruby after hours, none of us doing it kind of for our day jobs. We're a bunch of Java consulting slaves at the time, I think, Joe. But, I've known Joe a long time. Some of our shared passions have really been around this kind of community, right? Caring about software development, figuring out how to build, high velocity, very empowered teams to create beautiful things with software. So without any further ado, here's my friend Joe O'Brien.
So, nicest thing he's ever said about me, and I actually had to pay him for that. Yeah, exactly. I did tell him I had a bottle of scotch for him, so I guess that helped warm it up. So I've decided a movie theater is, good Lord, is that loud? All right, how's that? Still pretty damn loud. All right, how about that? Much better. So I've decided a movie theater is the perfect venue for a conference. I actually went to the bathroom, didn't have to stand in line. And then every now and then you'll be sitting here and you'll hear this loud from the movie theater next door. I like to pretend it's Uncle Bob speaking and it's some poor little programmer's head just going All right, so people patterns. I've been in IT not as long as people think, but long enough at this point, to have some interesting discoveries. And looking back on my background, I come from a sales background. Don't stop listening to me. I have stuff to talk about. Or as Mike Letterly likes to say, a former market droid. Being an extroverted geek is a very weird experience. Pretty damn cool for your career, let me tell you that. But I start realizing that we have this weird sense of, and we as in geeks have this weird sense of identity that we go with. We consider ourselves introverted geeks, and we use this as an excuse and a crutch for problems interacting with people. And we're in an Agile environment, right? We talk a lot about Agile. We talk a lot about this. We talk about process. What we're really talking about is understanding that people are involved in software. People are the biggest ingredient in software. But we don't talk about it enough. So that's what I come up with the missing ingredient. So I've recently been through a really amazing experience. My company was acquired. I started EdgeCase because I was too much of a chicken shit to work in my own basement, quite literally. Too much of an extrovert to work by myself. We started it almost 6 years ago. It'll be 6 years ago in July, so we're coming up on it pretty quickly. And back in January, we went through an acquisition. Boy, do those things take forever. But it was a great experience because there's some exciting stuff that we're getting to do now. A lot of things that we couldn't do before when things depended on myself and Ken solely that we're going to be able to do as a group. It's great. I get pairs as business owners. It's phenomenal. But there's a really freaking annoying part that came with this. And that is, I keep being introduced in certain circles when I go to give a talk as, recently acquired, and you go and you end up talking to lawyers and financial advisors and all these people, and they talk about, well, now that you're successful, and you've hit the pinnacle of success, and our sole definition of success in the tech industry is being acquired. It's kind of interesting. And again, it really chafes my ass. Because I live by a very different set of rules. Again, I started this company almost by accident. I decided I was working for a company I really enjoyed. I really liked the principles behind it. I had to get on a plane every Monday and step off every Friday. And I decided we could do what we're doing without the travel. Now, the irony is I've told that in 3 different countries just this year. But I decided that I needed some kind of guiding principles, some kind of lights that I go by. And so the first one is a very simple mirror, mirror on the wall question. If I had to go out and get a job tomorrow, what would it be? Is this still the place I would have to go work? Not a place I want to go work, the place I have to go. I will move heaven and earth. I will do what I have to do. I have to get in there. The second one's a little bit more controversial, but as the owner of a services company, it's really easy to fall into certain traps. And so by no means do I want to be a blood-sucking leech. But this is the pinnacle of my success. These were taken randomly from Twitter, and in any given month, I could probably pull off a half a dozen of these, totally unsolicited, out of the blue. You know, I can't believe I get paid to hang out and have fun. You know, as Justine so eloquently put it, no shit. I feel bad for people that don't have to work, that don't work for EduCase. This right here is success. These are people that love to come into work, that love to do what they do, and we all get together and do it. Let's be honest. Most of us are in IT because we have to. Not because, you know, work shoved us in there or we thought we were going to make a lot of money. Boy, were you fooled. But we realized that we couldn't stop fucking with our family computer, right? Our wives and moms hated us for years because every time they go down to play solitaire, the side of the computer was off. Oh yeah, I was working on the hard drive, and yeah, Newegg was running this special on this video card, and yeah, I'm not sure, some driver, blah, 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 you know, and they just, I actually bought my wife a Mac Mini, and she was so excited with it, and then she made me promise to never touch it. I thought she was kidding. I tried to upgrade the RAM. She damn near killed me. But we're in this because we love doing what we're doing, right? We can get paid to do this. There's a market for it. What better way to do this? But there's things we have to work on. Another kind of fun thing, I was giving this talk in LA, and I threw this slide in right before the talk because I was having a conversation with this guy, one of the few people that left us. And the reason he left us is he went on a client assignment to Venice Beach. He's standing there on a beach, recently broken up with his girlfriend. I mean, I can't compete with water. He hadn't been through the rest of LA yet, so I wish he had. But he always keeps telling people that, you know, the job he has now is the second best job he's ever had, referring to us, and it's awesome. So I ask you, what does it take to be a successful project, a successful team, to get something across the finish line? And everybody will tell you, people, process, technology, we know it, we chant it. We don't freaking live it. You go to a conference, any given conference, and you always hear lots of technology, and maybe if you're lucky, a few process talks. And every now and then you'll hit a conference where it's all process and, you know, maybe a couple technology things. But we never talk about people. Okay, rarely. I can't say never. Yes, I can. I'm full of hyperbole. Just deal with it. We never talk about people. We never talk about this other side of pair programming. Not the how to go back and forth and all this, but how do you deal with the dude that just had garlic at lunch, right? How do you deal with the guy who argues with every single thing you say? Where's Leon? No, I'm kidding. How do you deal with bosses? How do you deal with, why is it that they're mad at you at times when you don't think they should be? I mean, you said the words, right? What's going on? We don't talk about these things. Agile's a pressure cooker situation. Pair programming is one of the most intense exercises you can do. I went to work for this company. We paired almost all the time. Those are the most exhausting 8 hours of my life was that first day. The people that join EduCase, they tell you the same thing. The first week was one of the most exhaustive weeks I've ever had. But you know what? It's worth it. It's great. We're firing on all cylinders. But damn, that's intense. And it is. Arguments become much more. Trust is something that's a necessity, not an option, right? But how do you build these things? How do you go about doing this? And then I get conversations with people all the time where I see things happening in their business. How can I convince my boss to do this? Well, how did you ask him? Well, how can I, you know, this one person, there's such a problem, you know, they always want to poo-poo every idea. Well, do you understand why they're doing these things? I came to this realization a while back, and I called up a really close friend of mine, Glenn Vandenberg, and sorry, I'm gonna have to pause for 1 second and tell you a funny story, because this is the most intimidating move that ever happens to a speaker. I was giving a talk 2000, SD West, so 2004 would it have been, the last one? I don't remember, but getting ready to give a talk, young speaker, I get up there, kind of shaking, and I'm like, I get the nerves up to start, and I'm like, and it opens the door, and in walks Uncle Bob, and he always sits in the front row, and I'm like, oh shit. That's fun. Anyway, I called up a friend of mine, and I said, I came to this realization, and you've got a lot more experience than I do, which is a polite way of saying you're really fucking old. Called up Clan Vanderberg, and I said, I had this realization. I've never seen a project fail for technical reasons. I've seen it hiccup. I've seen problems happen, but I've never seen the failure be because of the technical issues. And trust me, I've been on a part of a lot of failed projects, despite my age. And he had been a part of a lot more because of his age. And he says, I'll take you one step further. I've never seen a project succeed for technical reasons. I find that interesting because we talk a lot about tech. We focus a lot of our energy on that. But we don't focus any energy on how to interact with the people around us. So this is still in its infancy. Because of the extroverted nature, because of everything else, I decided I wanted to get across the message of people for geeks. I couldn't figure out how to do it. Read this book that I should have read, God, back in high school, and I wish to God every single person in the world would read it. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. One of the best books ever written. Just fantastic, applies to every aspect of your life. Very dated material that applies perfectly to today. And he broke it down into nice, distillable chunks. And I realized we're geeks. We love patterns, right? So do I have my pattern languages correct? No. Do I care? No, I've got the microphone. So I want to make 2012 the year of the people. Dave Thomas says you should go out and learn a new language every year. That's great, Dave. I say no. I want you to go out and start reading about psychology. I want you to start focusing on that other aspect of the triangle. Permanently, no. But right now, yes. So let's get into some of these. Come up with some of these. Like most speakers I know that have trained me, you test your material on audiences. And so kind of came up with some of these individual distinct patterns, and we're going to walk through some of them. So you ever have that experience where you go to your first networking event, your first user group, your first conference that's not necessarily with a bunch of friends? You walk into a room, and all these people are standing around. Some of them have drinks. A lot of them have coats on. Speaking of which, it's hotter than hell. And you see them all talking, and you think, wow, they all know each other. This is hard. And then you get eye contact with that one person, as you're getting a drink or something, and you kind of smile, and you have that expected I should say something here. What the hell do I say? I don't know. So I want you to start what's called the conversation Rolodex. For those of you who don't know, the Rolodex was this old really cool thing where before we had phones, we put it on paper and we turned it and you had things flip around. Sorry, Isaac, I know it's before your time. Remind me to explain the whole pencil and cassette tape concept at some point too. But I want you to have a set of conversation starters in your head. Because you're with a bunch of people who have a lot in common with you. You're at a conference. What's the most interesting talk you saw today? You're at the end of Code Mash. What's the one technology you saw that you can't wait to go home and play with? I saw somebody put out a tweet back in September. She was very nervous about giving a talk at the same conference I was giving, and it was this really incredibly sad tweet. It just broke my heart. She goes, traveling to a different city with a bunch of strangers, with people I don't know, I'm going to be so lonely. I thought, wow, that's amazing, because I'm traveling to the same city, to a bunch of people that I don't know, and hardly any of my friends are going to be there. And I'm going to be incredibly comfortable in that environment. Let me tell you, I'm going to be a hell of a lot more comfortable than I'm going to be with my in-laws over Christmas dinner. Because I can walk up to anybody and go, so who's your favorite doctor? And they're not going to give me a podiatrist's name. They're going to say David Tennant. I'm going to say, you're wrong, but let's start a conversation about it. I can walk up to him and say, who shot first? Oh, come on. No, I don't know. Somebody will say, Vim, I see Emacs, just for shits and giggles. It's kind of fun. Have these things in your head. Have them ready. Write them down somewhere if you have to beforehand. Now, don't like sit in the corner going, okay, now what was that again? Okay, yeah, like, oh, shit, I forgot. Right? Like, just don't get that hung up on it. But think of these major kind of concepts beforehand, because your brain will just freeze automatically when you talk to somebody, right? But these are things we do. Those extroverts out there, us, that get along great in a room full of things, we're constantly going through these processes in our heads too. The people you're around in a group like this want to be around for the same reason. Unless they've got handcuffs on, they're there willingly. Okay, unless you're in like an enterprise scenario, which those badges usually act as handcuffs. Sorry, you gotta make some shitty enterprise joke at some point, right? I'm a Ruby guy, come on. Anyway, so have these things in your head. Be ready for them, because that awkward silence is gonna happen again. Some of these are going to fall flat. You might run into somebody who hasn't seen Doctor Who. I know it's weird. You might actually have this happen. You might run into somebody who hasn't seen Star... No, that's not going to happen. Leading into this, though, is just a strange fact that the little voices in your head are never going away. Well, at least until you're my age, and I'm sure they might at some point. But you're going to walk into this room. You're not going to know anybody. You're going to see people talking to each other, and you're going to go, they don't want to talk to me. They're engaged in conversation. They want to go to a foreign country where they speak, 2 different languages, and you're the only idiot in the room that speaks one. And it gets even better because you have no idea what they're talking about, and you start going, my God, are they talking about me? Did I stain my shirt again? Right? These things are going to continue to play. Okay? They're going to keep you from trying to go and engage in these conversations. Why? The brain hates being hurt. Your brain has this defense mechanism built around it. You've put up all kinds of defense mechanisms throughout time. The second book I want you to go out and read, if you haven't been to one of my talks in the last 2 years, is Pragmatic Thinking and Learning by Andy Hunt, where he takes the brain and distills it for you as a dual-core CPU with a shared bus. Now you know why most of the cognitive biases that exist. Cognitive biases are brain bugs. We have an errata for the brain. How freaking cool is that? We know what's going to go wrong. You should read this. Trust me. Anyway, you're going to start looking in there and you're going to see that the fact that the brain likes to be defensive. It doesn't like to be hurt. So it's going to put up these mechanisms that prevent you from going and doing things, the same things that prevent you from taking risks. The same part that you ignored in high school, you should start ignoring some now. I don't mean go and watch Jackass and try to perform those stunts again, okay? There's a balance, but understand that these voices aren't going to go away. They're going to continue to play, no matter how comfortable you are, no matter how much this happens. But they will stop you dead in your career. If I ever have to use a resume for a job, I will have failed from here on out. The next time I get a job, I want to just call my network. Network. Fancy business term for a lot of friends. You're in a room full of people with a lot in common. You have the potential to have a lot of friends. Don't let these things stop you from doing it. When you're in a discussion with somebody, you start having an argument. One of the most common things we don't do is understand the other side of the argument. Now, everybody will spit back the parable about, walk a mile in somebody else's moccasins and do all this, but rarely has anybody ever performed this. I lucked out. I came back my senior year in high school. We moved back from Germany. Very intimidated at this school that had more seniors than I'd ever had in one school building in my life. And I'm standing in front of somebody who's giving me a choice of classes I can take. Wow, is that a concept? And one of them was speech and debate. I thought, what the hell? Okay, I also thought it's really hard to make friends in a civilian school as an Army brat. So theater is usually the place where they're a little more open. So let's go and do this. But I didn't realize it was competitive speech and debate. So I got dumped into this class. And it really transformed the way I interacted with people. Because we went through a really large questionnaire. It was pretty intense. It was heart-wrenching at times. Talked a lot about How do you feel about abortion? And it wasn't just flat out like, how do you feel about abortion? I mean, there were some good questions that led into these things, a lot of discussion points. And the teacher really digested it. And then your first assignment was to argue the other side of one of your topics that you felt the most strong about. It was the hardest damn exercise I've ever done in my life. Argue politics with somebody and then turn around and argue their side and let them argue your side. This is an art that is gone in our society. Sorry. Big pissy point for me at the moment. We were built on the idea of compromise. We were built on the idea of discussion and debate. And you will learn while arguing. I changed my political beliefs 180% during one debate. And I can tell you the debate. I'm not going to do it right now, but in order to do this, though, you have to have respect for the person that's there. They have to have respect for you. There's a safety thing that goes into this. But the most basic, fundamental thing you need to be able to do is stand in their shoes and look at yourself and understand, what are they seeing? What is going on? Tied in with this is this idea of the three realities. And this one's a little bit harder for me to work on and talk about, because I discovered this in a very unfortunate place, which was marriage counseling. We were, let's just say, at the end, right? Critical things had happened. We've got 3 kids. We need to figure out something to move forward in life. And we start going through and ripping up 11 years of history in a very emotional thing over the course of many, many weeks. And one day this counselor says, there's this interesting reality in life that every single discussion comes down to 3 realities. This ties back in the last one. There's what they're seeing. There's what you're seeing. And there's what actually has occurred. And then there are more tears when you realize that some of our biggest fights had started off over a misplaced dish, something else. And without asking the other person and just making an assumption about what they're thinking, you start arguing for your side and defending yourself. And they get attacked, and then they attack back. It was incredibly eye-opening to go back and rip through and realize, and it was incredibly sad to lose 10 years of your life to stupid crap. But we'd let this build up. And again, this is one of those things. It's like I talk about, we don't work on people and software. I mean, we don't work on this on marriages either. Right? How people are married for this long without training, I don't know. It's amazing. But anyway, we're going through this and we start realizing that so many of these things just need to be talked about. On a funnier side, there's a great book. Scott Berkun wrote this book called Confessions of a Public Speaker. Not a book I would have picked up. I don't know why. Just something about it didn't necessarily appeal to me, but they gave it a free copy to these speakers that went to this one conference, and Jim Wyrick gave it to me after he read it, and he's like, you've got to read this, it's really funny. And there's this great story, and Scott is a professional speaker, and he's just been chosen to speak at one of the big O'Reilly events, like Web 4.5 or Ajax or something, and so there's like quite a few thousand people there, and he has a 10-minute talk. And Scott has the same reaction I have when somebody gives me a 10-minute talk, which is, holy shit, I can't say my name in 15 minutes. And so he practices. First time through, 13-something minutes. Second time through, he whittles it down to about 11. Keeps going. Finally gets it down. 9 minutes, 50 seconds. This is perfect. This is excellent. I'm ready to do it. Practice it a couple more times. Variance of just a few seconds here and there. Okay, I'm ready to give it. So he gets there the day of. Huge, beautiful stage. Guy gets up, just like Todd. Introduces the speaker, great introduction, thank you. He walks across, shakes his hand, smiles, awesome, gets out his remote, turns around, 9 minutes and 20 seconds to go. Oh shit. He looks at his timer and realizes he's never accounted for introduction, walking across stage, all of this. And this is something he's jam-packed with information, mind you, right? So he does what I like to refer to as pulling a Scott Chacon, which is he just starts talking really fast. Lots of good information, really fast, because he's like, I've got to make up some time. And he's going through his talk, and he's going through, and he looks around, and he's like, oh crap. He's got 3 minutes left, and he's almost done. So he starts slowing down and dragging it out, and he's hemming and hawing over a certain point and going over it again and again. And then he finishes like just about the time goes, and the time goes, he's like, all right, great. And he walks off stage. He's like, oh my God, that was the worst talk I've ever given. This is a guy that gets paid to speak, so he takes this very, very seriously, right? And he's like, I can't believe what I'm doing. I'm not sure. It's the worst talk I've ever given. And he walks off stage. About 10 minutes later, somebody walks up and goes, oh my God, that was the best talk I've ever seen. Looking around like, me? Yeah, it's, you talked about this and you connected here and and it just goes on, and he's like, this guy's a freaking idiot. Or he just has never been out of the room because, this is not the best talk you've ever seen. And he starts reflecting back on it at some point. He realizes, no, that wasn't the best talk this guy's ever seen. But it wasn't the worst talk this guy had ever seen either, that he'd ever given. He's like, the reality was it was probably somewhere in between. But he had failed to look at that. He'd automatically just kind of blown this guy off, like, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're talking about. But the reality was, it was somewhere in between. So there's always three realities. If you get into a very heated argument with somebody, take a step back. Why are they arguing so passionately for their side? And don't just, we'll get into some negativity stuff in a little bit, but don't just take this ultra like, okay, they're just obviously uneducated idiots, but besides that, what's going on, right? Understand what is it, try to put yourself in their shoes and be able to argue that point. Understand what is the motivation behind that? What's happening here? And if all else fails, ask them. I freak people out all the time when I do this. It's great. Anybody ever meet Matt Yoho? One of the greatest people I've ever known. Biggest heart you'll ever meet. And the greatest emo-like complexion sometimes. Just, right? We'll be in the middle of a discussion and he'll just like, I'll stop and I'm like, I feel like I pissed you off. What'd I do? No, I was trying to figure out what I was going to have for dinner. But it's this, like, because automatically what's going to happen is like, oh crap, I just said something to piss him. Oh, he doesn't understand, that we were doing this. I forgot to reach out to him and tell him about this. Oh my God. And, you just start going down this rabbit hole of things, and then you try to patch that without actually understanding, was this what happened? No, he was just hungry. It happens, those skinny guys. We did this fun exercise one time. I did this as a 3-hour workshop. We got everybody together in a room and said, okay, find a random person in the audience and tell them a story about a time you really got hurt. It was just gnarly. You came up, you fell off your bike, you scraped your knee, and you ended up in the hospital, and it was just, guys are great at this kind of thing. Oh man, tell this to the other person. And then, flip and tell the other person. Okay, great. And they do this. And at the end, you're like, all right, great. Now that you did that, I want you to take the story you just heard and tell it to another person as if it's your own. First person, you're in their place, and you always see this look of, oh shit, go across their face. Why? And I am as guilty of this as anybody. To this day, I still do it. Because they have a story to tell. So you hear words that are coming out of somebody's mouth, but you hear them as a clock ticking down. You're waiting for your chance to speak because you have something to contribute. My wife one time came to a speaker's dinner I put together after a conference, and she looked at me afterwards. She goes, I am utterly exhausted. I'm like, what? She goes, you guys are so combative when you talk. And I realized we've got a bunch of like these type A big personalities in a room. Watch a table full of speakers sometime, have a conversation. It's hilarious. It's like we're fighting to talk. We're not really, but it seems like this combative type thing of like, oh yeah, and when are we, right? And you're just interjecting and it's going on. But a lot of times we have this problem where we're waiting for that chance to interject that thing that we realized. What's wrong with that? As soon as you flip that bit, you stop taking in the information because you're listening with the intent to speak. So you're not really listening, you're just hearing. You're hearing words come out. So for those of you in relationships, it's that time where you look at your boyfriend and he's telling you something about work and you're just going, uh-huh. I want to ask you where we're going to go to dinner, but I'll let you finish. That time when you go and you show your wife this really cool thing you just did and it worked today, and this programming, and she's going, okay, yeah, great, right? It's that time where you have that story to tell, you have that thing, and you just can't wait to tell it, and you stop processing information. And those are fun kind of social scenarios, but how many times does this happen in work, right? We've all got that one person in our team, well, a lot of people do at work, when you don't get to pick your teams, that one person in the room where you don't really, let's say, value their opinion as much as others, to put it politely. And they start speaking, and you're just like, oh God, him again. And you're just waiting for him to finish so that you can keep going. You send signals. You show body language. You don't think you're doing it, but you really do. People realize you check out. But you stop taking in any information. You stop with that ability to understand and empathize with this person and where they're coming from. So when you're listening, try to make sure you're honestly listening. Put that story on the stack, but let it go and honestly concentrate on what's going on. Bad news has a really interesting effect on you. It's a physical effect. You're coming home, and you have to tell your boyfriend that that vacation you guys promised to go sit on the beach and enjoy it, you actually have to cancel because you forgot to ask for the time off, and it's now too late. You've flipped the bit on work, and you realize you have to quit, but you really like your boss personally. You have that bit of bad news in the back. You're consulting, and you realize you've got to go tell your manager that that thing she had you estimate, yeah, you were off by a little bit, like a factor of 10, and you don't know how to tell her. So what happens? Well, bad news is an acid on your brain. It sits there, and it starts eating away. The only thing you can do with it is get it off your head. Reveal it quickly. It's a really interesting discovery. You have not been hired because you know the answer to every freaking problem out there. I know this is news to a lot of you. But you don't have the answer to every problem you're going to face. And you know what? Your boss knows this. This is not a secret. So, you discover that you've been off by a factor of 10. Oh, crap. What's the first thing you do? You pick up the phone. You walk across the hallway. You hide under your desk. No, not really. You go and you quickly go to them and say, we just discovered this. This is what we discovered. These are the 3 things I'm considering doing. Here's at what point I should have an answer on these 3 things and discover, am I correct? And then when we're done working on this, I want to sit down and make sure this doesn't happen again and walk through steps to do it. Walk into them with a plan that says, here's what I think is going on, because you're a problem solver. You've got 3 ideas already. Now, maybe spend 5 or 10 minutes trying them if you want, but don't go any more than that, because it's a cycle you'll go down and you'll lose 3, 4, 6 hours before you realize it. And then all of a sudden people have gone home and now you need to wait till the next day. And then you've let it wait 24 hours and oh crap, I don't want to wait. Well, now it's terrible. Not only is it an acid on your brain, it's an acid on the trust that others have in you. Majority of the geeks in the room were the smartest ones in their class. They had the answers. People went to them to find these things out. We simply went through school waiting for those cycles to finish. Graduation, okay, it was fun, but thank God it's over. It was more of a celebration, right? Not like, oh my God, I worked really hard. Not to make light on people that have to do this. It's unfortunate. There are people that have to struggle, but a lot of people in this room did not have to do that. And so you had the answers to things. You finished the test first. You went through these things. And that's great. It's a wonderful accomplishment. The problem is it sets you up for really bad habits later, which is I have the answer. And you're going to run into problems that you don't have a freaking clue how to solve. But you've been hired as a problem solver, not a wizard with a wand that goes, ba-ding. Unless you're using Ruby and some meta magic might get rid. No, I'm kidding. But understand that people have hired you to go through these steps, and things are going to happen. It sounds easy for me to sit here on stage and go, oh, yes, you do this. But trust me, I know better than anybody. I run a company. I do sales for this organization. I have to call people that are sending me actual checks and go, yeah, we screwed that up big time. We hit an unrecoverable error from this. We're not sure how to solve this problem we told you we were definitely sure how to do. That thing we were really sure we could do in 2 weeks, yeah, so 2 months, was it? I've had these conversations. I've also been the one to wait 3, 4, 5 days to have the conversations. And you know what? They get worse. Why? You've been hired to solve problems. You've not been hired to know everything. So what happens when you don't tell somebody? So you walk into a room and you go, yeah, we discovered that we're about a factor of 10 off in this. And I go, really? When did you discover that? Last week. So remember earlier when I said, see things from their side? What does that tell you when somebody walks in and says, we discovered this last week and I'm coming to tell you now? And I sit in the room next door. Somebody tell me, what does that say to you? I don't care? Somebody said fear. What was that?
Trying to cover it up.
Trying to cover it up?
Not working together.
Not working together?
I'm not important.
I'm not important. Here's one of the kickers. You tell somebody this, it means, I don't think you're important enough to tell. I don't trust you to be smart enough to help me with this problem. That's a really shitty message to send to somebody you're trying to work for, you're trying to work with. Really shitty message. Now, did you really sit down and make a conscious choice to go, I really don't think this guy's smart enough to help me figure this out, so I'm going to go over here and try to fix it? No. You got put into a situation you weren't used to, which is you didn't know the answer. And something screwed up. It's uncomfortable. It sucks. But the faster you get it out there, the better. Every time I've relayed a message like this, the outcome has been amazing. Always better than I thought. I instantly, physically feel better. But those 5 days that I'd wait other times, I wouldn't eat. Believe it or not, that's a big achievement for me. I couldn't sleep right. You just couldn't relax any, no matter how much scotch you have. Reveal bad news quickly. All of these are also predicated on a certain idea, which is you are a trustworthy, positive person. We'll get into the positivity later. How do you establish that? Consistent, uncompromising honesty. This is the benefit of giving a talk. It's still kind of rough in your head on certain ideas, because this one is morphed through 3 different languages. The first time I gave it, it was brutal honesty, which sounded very, very negative. And Ola Binney came up with this idea of uncompromising honesty, and I love that. But I was in Norway giving this as a workshop, and one of the guys we were having a discussion about, he says, you know, I'd add to that consistent. Because if you're inconsistent with your honesty, it's just as bad. So, a friend of mine calls me up the other day and says, you know, you've just been acquired, and I'm talking to this place over here, and I'm curious, what do you think? How's the experience been? And I tell him, there's some amazing parts to it, but there's some parts that really suck. My wife called me unemployable. I thought she meant I couldn't show up for work at 8 o'clock anymore. Turns out it's really hard to go work for somebody again. When they send you an email that says, well, have you thought of this? And you send back a shitty message that says, well, of course I thought of this, and I did this and this too. And you take a step back later and you go, oh, wait, they weren't being passive aggressive? Crap. It's really hard to work for somebody again. It's really hard to give up this control. There's a lot of amazing things that come with this. The support network, the other things, it's a great step. And I look at this as another psychological challenge to get through. But I'm talking about this, and I'm telling him about this. And we talked about some other things. And he laughs at the end of the call. He's like, well, Joe, you totally let me down. I'm like, what? He goes, I called. I was hoping he'd give me the sunshine and roses, and I'd walk off this call happy and just ready to go. And I laughed. And I'm like, you didn't really expect that. He goes, oh, hell no. It's like, I knew who I was calling. Right? You know you're going to get the straight story from somebody. I have certain people that I respect a lot and I know will give me honest feedback that I need it. And so consistently that when I'm working on something or I'm trying to improve as a speaker or I'm trying to improve something, I will walk up to them and say, so how did I do? And it's really great as a speaker to constantly get positive reinforcement. It's a wonderful feeling. I love it. People tell you, oh, that was a great talk, that was wonderful. But every now and then you need that, yeah, that thing you said there, don't ever say that again. Yeah, over here, that was some really subtle sexism that was really terrible. These people that will give you that feedback, and because they're consistent and they're honest, you know you can ask the question and get a correct answer. There's so many people out there that try to worry about what I want to hear or what others, not I in particular, but in general, right? You ask a question, people worry about, well, what does this person want to hear? That doesn't play really well in helping people get ahead. Makes life very difficult in that way. And you start to get this reputation as somebody who cannot be fully trusted. Don't let that occur. All right, so the next one, this has been really serious. I'm going to break this up a little bit. So I told somebody in the audience I was going to pick on them, but I'm actually going to do something different. Hey, Doc, you want to join me on stage? So one of the ways I've done this talk is with a really good friend of mine. Her name's Jessie. She runs a place called the Improv Effect. She does improv training, which I thought improv was all about people in theater who were now bored with it and tried to move on, like it was more advanced. Turns out that introverts are some of the best improv people ever. And there's a fun exercise I want to do. I hope you don't mind. You can kick my ass later if you want. It's a great thing about how...
me do it in front of Uncle Bob. That's
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the only one intimidated up here, right? Because you want to talk about somebody give you an honest feedback, let me tell you. So we're going to do a fun exercise before the next pattern. Give me a random piece of dialogue, one line. This is not rhetorical. I went to the store. So your line is, I went to the store. Somebody give me an emotion.
Fear.
Fear. Do it as if you're afraid. Say the line, I went to the store, as if you're afraid.
Wow. Fear is a sucky emotion.
It really is.
Yeah. What would I be afraid of?
Everything. And just
So I went to the store.
Excellent. All right, give me another one. What?
elation.
Elation. You're excited.
And I still went to the store.
And I went to the store. That's the line.
Dude, I went to the store.
Excellent. Somebody else.
Anger.
Action.
Anger.
Anger. That's better. Anger.
It's the exact same line. Dude, I went to the store.
Excellent. So one last one. Your wife's standing next to you. You're trying to hit on her.
Really trying to hit on my
Yes, we have to still do this, remember?
So, I went to the store.
That was awesome, man. Thank you. That was great. I did this at a user group, and our line was, we're going to need a bigger boat. And that last one was just great. We're going to need a bigger boat. Notice something. Many times, in fact, I would say the majority of times, it doesn't matter what you say. It's all in how you say it. People speak and give 20 different messages. Lots of things get interpreted. So it really didn't matter what line we gave Doc. We knew what he was feeling, what was happening. It was one of the best deliveries I've seen ever for this. You knew exactly what was going on, right? But it doesn't matter what the actual words are. People forget that the entire picture gets taken into account when people think about what you're doing. when people decide to give you money, when people decide to listen to you for advice. One of the funniest lines you'll get from people who've been in 1 or 2 jobs their entire life, or people who are really early in their career, is they get really pissed off when they see the consulting effect. Now, the consulting effect is I walk in, and believe it or not, I can wear a tie periodically. I really try not to do it or ever have pictures taken of it. But I slap on a tie, I go into a company, I sit down, and they go through their problems, and you're like, well, have you thought about this? And the manager's sitting there going, oh my God, you think we should do that? I'm like, yeah, this would be great because, here's what you could do. Oh, excellent. Well, we should try that. And you look across the table, and there are these guys that are actively seething. You realize if the manager leaves, they're kicking your ass. Because they have said those exact words. They had those exact same arguments. They had the same points. And this guy who pays them a salary won't listen to him, but he'll listen to you. What? It even got to a point where we worked with one company, and this was sad, but so true. They had lost so much respect in both directions. It was very much a us versus them mentality. But I was also good friends with the developers on this team, that we would go in to talk to this person, to go in to talk to this team. We were going to be in this big team meeting. I would get an email from the client lead. It would say, here's the things we're trying to get him to do. Would you please say these? Because I know he'll listen to you. And you just shake your head going, Jesus, dude. I got into one client. We did 5 days worth of work. A guy called me up and he says, look, we're right there. We're just at that, we're almost at that finish line. We just need to get across. And this developer just can't get it done. I don't know what's going on. And he came to me and, at one point said, he's got this exciting startup and I need a junior level guy. Translation, I'm not going to pay him shit. And I need somebody in. And I had just met this guy out of college who was he absolutely loved what he was doing. He was burning with it. He was dying to get paid to program. You knew he was going to do a good job. And, well, he was in college, so he was going to be cheap. So I hooked the 2 guys up. And I go in there. And it's been 6 or 8 months since I've seen him. And you walk in, and you can feel the hostility. You can just cut through it with a knife. And let's call him Bob. Bob's sitting over in an office. He's, I don't know, late 30s probably. He's, had a couple sales jobs in his life. He's in casual mode, which means his incredibly starched white shirt is unbuttoned 1 button. Collar stays are still in, don't worry. No tie, he's casual. Sleeves rolled up one turn. And I'm talking to him, and it's, 8:30 in the morning. And sitting in his office in this chair, and we're kind of talking, and the door's open, and I can see the front door. And I hear the door open, and I kind of look out, and in walks, let's call him George. So in walks George, going to his office. Now, he's a college kid, right? So what's he do? He gets up in the morning, claps his hands, all the clothes go running to one side of the room, and anything left laying down is obviously still clean. So picks up a shirt, throws it on, bleary-eyed, hair's not combed, just, Birkenstocks, ripped shorts, comes strolling in, and it's, 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock. It's a little bit later in the morning, having a really hell of a time walking in. And as I'm talking, Nathan sees this very same thing happen. And Bob sees this very same thing happen. And shit, hate it when I do that. Beep. And you see him just freeze. His jaw clenches. He's in the middle of a sentence. And again, one of those, it doesn't matter what they're saying because he's saying other words, but his thoughts are very much projecting something else. And you see the anger go on. And starts telling a story about just the technical problems they're having and the things that this guy just isn't good at and all of this. Okay, so I go in and I sit down with George, I think I called him. So I go and sit in his office, and he's bleary-eyed as hell. He's like, oh my God, yeah, I was working on this one script, and I was up till 3 in the morning because, I started to install this, and then I needed to install Berkeley DB, and then, of course, my Ruby instance blew up, and I'm reinstalling this, and, I finally get it all working, and, it's just been crazy. And he's like, I'm just not understanding this and this. Okay, and so we start talking. It's typical things we had been through. And so I bring in a couple of our people, and they pair with him. And through this set of features that they want us to get done, but also kind of work with them on some of the problems they've been having. And I go in to follow up a week later, and I go and sit in Bob's office, and he goes, I can't believe this. He says, I expected you guys to get a lot done, and you did. That was great. What I didn't expect was all the extra productivity you got out of George. That was just amazing. I mean, he just turned into this completely different person. And you kind of see their conversation styles. And, in talking to George, he's like, yeah, he just doesn't understand. I mean, he said, I'm up till ungodly hours trying to get this done, and I'm really dedicated. He feels like I'm not taking it seriously. At no time do either one of these guys understand what they're projecting. Because I hate to tell you, you're getting paid to do work, strolling in at 10 o'clock, never dressing, never bothering to grab a shirt out of the dryer and actually fold it before you do something with it. These things build up impressions. Right or wrong, people make judgments on you by what you wear, what you do. How big you are, how small you are, no hair, some hair, whatever, gray hair. There are judgments that are made. On the opposite side, you're making these judgments. You're not saying them. I would never judge anybody. I'm not going to say that. Yeah, bullshit. Your eyes, your mouth, there's clenched teeth that you're speaking through. All these things project what's going on. You're definitely giving signals. And so both of them are giving each other signals. One of them's telling the kid, you're not worth the little bit of money I pay for you. You're not taking this serious. I don't think you can accomplish anything. Sentences become much simpler, almost kid-like. Whereas the other guy's looking around going, what's the guy want from me? I'm out here, I'm busting my ass, I'm doing these things. But at no time are they understanding to listen between the lines. What are the other things that are being taken into account? Because then the story becomes obvious and it just stopped. All right, looks like the battery's out. So, oh wait, mic over here. That's interesting because I'm usually pretty good at projecting, and I just tried and I went, oh my God, this thing like sucks sound out. That was wild. And I really can't scream any louder. So, at no time are they looking at what else is going on, what's happening, what else is being projected. I had a phone call with a client recently, and I realized it had been a while since I touched base with them from sales perspective, and project manager's doing great, project seems to be going. I'm just touching base, and great, we're going through this list of things, and okay, anything else, and oh yeah, just one other kind of offhand thing. How do you think George is doing on the project? And different George, different time frame. I'll probably screw the name up and reveal at some point. But he goes, how do you think George is doing on the project? And here's the guy that actually has engaged with us and written the checks. It's not the tech lead. He's like a step up from him. And I stopped. I was like, well, I could tell you how I think he's doing on the project. But you don't really want to know that, do you? Like, what is it that's making you ask me this question? I'm just curious. Like, what's going on? There's obviously something here. Well, yeah, so and he starts going in this story about how the impression had been built up that this guy was just not delivering on the project. It was really interesting because I could very easily just answer the question. We're engineers, we do that all the time. And people get pissed at you for doing it. And you're like, what the hell? You asked me a question, I told you, great. Now you're mad. People don't follow these same things. People don't speak their mind like they should. People don't have the uncompromising honesty. They do the political dances. They do the different things because they don't feel safe enough to do this. They need permission. You need to give them that landing zone. So it's up to you to read in between what they're saying. We all took English Lit, or a lot of people did, and at some point read this really cool book about this whale, this really cool fishing story. But then the teacher went and ruined it because apparently it was all about like life and death and all that. And you realize at the end of it had nothing to do with a whale, nothing to do with water, nothing to do with revenge. And they ruined Moby Dick forever, right? But this was actually one of the best exercises you could have done. Followed by that one class that most of us took in college where you write the paper where the professor says, I want your opinion, and you give it and you get flunked and you go, what the hell? The next paper, you write his opinion, you get an A, you went, what? That's the best preparation you can get for life ever. You start reading between lines. What do people actually want? What are they trying to say? Listen to that. If you start listening to it, people are screaming it. It's pretty interesting. I've been trying to beat this into the head of my business partner for 6 years. If you talk to him about finances, he says it's pretty simple. You go buy gold, you go bury it in the backyard. Get a shotgun for the zombie apocalypse that's coming at some point. Let's just prepare for the worst case scenario for everything. He's a great guy. I would say this if he was here, and he'd laugh with me. But, of course, he'd call me a dreamer that would bankrupt us in a heartbeat if given the paycheck. So, it balances out. But anyway, there are a lot of situations that you're going to get into where you have to make assumptions about motives. You're going to be sitting in a room with some lawyers, maybe, talking about a deal that could be amazing. You're going to be sitting across from some guy who has what seems like an amazing business opportunity, and it really is. It's not one of those networky, oh, you're going to make $1 million doing this. It seems like a really interesting thing, and you're sitting there going, well, why did he come to me? Again, we hate to be hurt. We hate to be let down. We don't want to be inside of that terrible situation and be screwed. We don't want to be there, with empty pockets. And so we start assuming the negatives of what can happen. It's a very easy road to go down. There are two roads that you sit here and look at. One of them could be maybe slightly elaborate story, but with really good people involved and a really interesting kind of side effect. Or the other one's just the obvious, obviously they're just here to screw us and they're just here to take our money, and if given the chance, they're going to walk right all over us, and we got to make sure that we're protected against that. That road is very easy to march down. It's an easy path. It's also the path that doesn't lead very far. The path ends very quickly. You start assuming that everybody is out there to get you. Things happen in a much more negative scenario. There's this great hippie guy who, unfortunately, has cut his hair, started wearing real shoes, and stopped wearing tie-dyed shirts, Corey Haynes. Love the man to death. He went on this journey, and he went to a bunch of companies just to see how they work, with the positive hippie assumption that people were going to pay for it and take care of them. And you know what they did? And it was wonderful. And he learned a ton. And he called me up one day and he said, Joe, I've been to 6 other companies that think very similarly to the way you do and the conversations we've had. What do you think about all of us getting in a room and just talking? Okay, let's give it a shot. So we got together in Chicago. Unfortunately, one guy had to Skype in because there was a volcano that none of us could pronounce in Iceland that decided to slow all flights down. And we started what's called the Cluster of 7. 7 companies, almost identical in size, in direct competition with each other, sitting around talking about everything. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And to this day, we do it every 6 months. It's one of the best things I could ever do. But it's amazing how many people I tell this story to that think, oh my God, aren't they going to take all your customers? Well, what if they steal how you do your business? What's going to happen? It's a really easy road to go down. We decide to start swapping people. We do these craftsmanship swaps where we send one person, they send one person to us, and just to see how things work. And at one point we start talking through, well, what about the NDAs that are involved? Well, what do we have to do with this? And granted, there are always legal documents you have to worry about with, between you and your clients, but we decided, you know what? We won't put them on certain projects because of obvious client confidentiality issues. But in general, I'm going to trust that you're a good person. You're going to trust that I'm a good person, and we're just going to do this. Every single company in that group has advanced in massive ways. A lot of because of other things we've all done. I'm not going to say that they're all reliant on this or we're all, we prop them up. Not at all. But we all give 100% of what we have out on a table, put it out there with this assumption. By assuming the positive, we're able to keep moving forward. On a smaller scale, anybody done improv before? Yeah? What's the golden rule of improv? What are the two magic words? Yes and. So in improv, you're doing a scene, and there are always two words you have to remember. Yes and. Yes is the positive. Because wouldn't it suck to be in a group with somebody, and you're standing up on the stage, you're like, holy crap, I can't believe we landed on the moon. Somebody else walks up next to you and goes, I'm not on the moon. Now what? Or, even better, holy crap, I can't believe we're on the moon. Yep. Move it forward. Keep going. It's kind of a fun little exercise to think about. But think about this in conversations. Think about this in life as you're having discussions, as you're having these discussions, brainstorming exercises, for instance, right? Play with something. Let it come out. Don't just shoot somebody down immediately because they stop contributing. Take it and see if you can run with something. Keep going. Keep exercising on it. It's really fascinating. And I just realized that I've actually mixed up the last two. So you had the assume the positive, and positivity moves us forward. Conversations move forward in this way. So, what are we doing? We're making 2012 the year of the people. Keep an eye on my Twitter feed, not just because I'm narcissistic enough to put it up on a slide, but because we're going to be announcing PeopleConf. We're going to be doing it here. It's going to be one day of a conference dedicated to teaching you how to be a better team member. People for geeks. We're going to jump you out of your comfort zone. We're going to have a lot of fun, and there will be a scotch event at some point. So yes, I'm not above bribing people. But we will be doing that. Thank you so much for coming, and I'm open to questions. And somebody's going to have to shout because I can't see anything except shapes. They got these spotlights on me, and I just don't know what's going on.
Raise your hand if you want a mic.
Raise your hand if you want a mic. I hate this part where I feel like I've got to take Q&A because it just completely deadens the audience, right? And then you feel the need to make stupid jokes, and it just gets worse and worse. And then those people sitting in the middle of the aisle, in the middle of the rows, are going, God damn it, I'm trapped. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for coming.